When critiquing a video game, gamers will 90% of the time highlight whether the gameplay is good or bad. And I mean, yeah, that should be obvious. It's the reason we play video games in the first place. While a game can have a great narrative, visual style, and well-written characters, none of that matters if the gameplay sucks complete ass. If we were to put things into percentages on what matters most in video games, gameplay would probably take up 70 to 80%, with everything else taking up the remaining 20-30%. Again, pretty reasonable thing to assume for most gamers. But there is something that I personally value as much or even greater than gameplay. You've all read the title. A game's music is absolutely paramount to my enjoyment of a game. You could have the best gameplay known to mankind, but have circus music running in the background 24/7, and I'll probably give your game a 0 out of 10. You could have the most boring, worthless, buggy, brain-dead garbage gameplay that I wouldn't even know how a human being could come up with a game this garbage. Or you could sneak in one absolute banger soundtrack, and I'll probably go, yeah, it's an okay game, 4 out of 10. What I'm trying to say is every game is one banger song away from avoiding being thrown into the abyss of forgotten bad games. And not only that, for the actually good games, they are one banger song away from being absolute masterpieces. As someone who finds joy in a variety of games, it also makes me very picky when it comes to what I like in a game. For FPS, I can't really get into CSGO or Call of Duty, but find myself enjoying TF2 and Valorant due to the more varied gameplay with their heroes as well as having a more colorful presentation. For RPGs, I love games like Persona, but fail to get into games like Darkest Dungeon even though I really wanted to like it. As for Metroidvanias, even though both Hollow Knight and Ori are beautiful, masterclass games, I've only ever finished Ori as of this video, even though I've owned both for the same amount of time. Hey, wait a minute. Am I just a monkey brain gamer who only likes games that have pretty colors? Even if my brain has a tiny attention span, no matter what kind of game it is, if you can hook me in within the first few hours with a fire soundtrack, you've hooked me in for the rest of the game. Take Devil May Cry 5. The game is far from a dull grayscape, but the areas you traverse through are quite grim and on the darker side when it comes to colors. Sounds like not my cup of tea, but within literal minutes of starting the game, we are gifted one hell of an opening sequence. Alongside Nero's sick nasty moves, Devil Trigger is what makes the scene for me, and to have it as Nero's battle theme is what drives me to not only play the game, but improve at playing it. DMC5 has a system in which the higher your combo score is, the more of the battle theme you will get to hear. At low combo levels, you may only hear the instrumentals of the track, but as you go up in ranks, you'll hear their vocals, and it's only at the highest ranks that you'll hear the beat drop and then the chorus ring out. Really gets a guy motivated to learn and pull off insane combos even if I'm still bad at it. I personally wouldn't enjoy DMC5 as much as I did were it not for the music. Hell, I've only played the base game, but one of these days when I go back to play the Virgil DLC, I already know I'm gonna have a very tempestuous experience. So at this point, you should get that I really like my video game music. But the reason I made this video wasn't only to sound incredibly pretentious about video games, it was also to showcase some of my personal favorite tracks that really piqued my experience with a game. I separated them into 3 categories: level themes, character themes, and of course, boss music. These 3 categories should be pretty self-explanatory. Good level themes are what set the mood for your playthrough, good character themes help expand a character and hype up a character's big moment, and good boss themes are a culmination of everything you've gone through in a game and puts it on grand display. So, without further ado, let's start simple, shall we? Shantae Half-Genie Hero is a simple game. As is with most 2D platformers, your goal is to get from point A to point B while clearing obstacles via movement or cold hard violence. Half-Genie Hero wasn't a particularly hard game to play, but it was still very fun. This was my entry into the Shantae franchise, and I've got to say, it left one hell of an impression. Everything in this game was brimming with so much charm and personality that sold me into completing it and then pre-ordering the sequel. But above it all, as always, the music was absolutely fire. And I don't mean in that the very first level you play and the game literally goes up into flames, just pure banging BGM. But even though the first level has an amazing backing track for your trek across a burning city, it isn't my favorite within the game. We need to look no further than the second level, an area filled to the brim with the opposite of fire, water.
Ready.
I honestly can't clearly describe my love for Mermaid Falls BGM like I could with every other game on the list. It just elicits primal feelings of joy within me. Maybe it's because of how it reminds me of soundtracks in older games, in which the wave of nostalgia just washes over me, reminding me of those blissful childhood days that I'll never get to experience again. Or maybe it's just because of the great beat drop. That could be it too. Ori and the Blind Forest is a truly magical experience. Lively world to explore, tight engaging platforming, atmospheric music, and most importantly, pretty colors. While Ori could never contend with being my favorite game of all time, it's most certainly my favorite Metroidvania / 2D platformer. But to be honest, it did take a bit for the game to grow on me. Ori is very floaty and the combat kinda sucks ass, leading to a rather slow start to the game. But as you progress, as with any Metroidvania, you gain new abilities to help aid you in your journey. And a large turning point for Ori is when you receive the Bash ability. By using Bash when near an enemy or a projectile, Ori redirects said object while propelling themselves in the opposite direction. This ability is what defines a lot of Ori's platforming. It opens up new ways to approach puzzles and enemy encounters. Chaining bashes together so that you don't even need to touch the ground is a very satisfying way to maneuver throughout the game. After putting your newly obtained abilities through the ringer, you complete one of the objectives needed to bring life back into the forest and progress the story. Alright, Jinzo Tree completed. Now, time to backtrack down the tree and leave from where I came from. Run. As the water rapidly submerges the inside of the tree, you bash left and right off enemies who have unfortunately made their homes inside the tree, go through portals, bounce off plants and lanterns, and just as the water is about to catch up to you, phew, barely made it. All in a day's work. Oh god, Curl, leave me alone! The Jinzo Tree escape sequence is one of my favorite moments in gaming. Period. It was a genuinely difficult challenge that took me more than 20 attempts to complete, but throughout it all, I wasn't angry that I was getting completely destroyed by this level. What kept me going strong every time I missed a precise bash jump was the backing track. This absolutely beautiful orchestral BGM induces the perfect amount of tension and panic while also providing you with a strong sense of drive to not give up. You aren't bad at this. You will beat this level. You are a gamer. You should love yourself now. If this escape didn't have such an epic track to go alongside such a high stakes situation, then I'd probably still like it since the bash mechanic is pretty fucking goated. But it'd be nowhere near its peak. Oh, how I long to relive playing the Ori games. Sadly though, after Will of the Wisps, Ori's story has come to its bittersweet conclusion, and the likelihood of a sequel is not very high. Maybe one day I'll be able to experience something like Ori again. One day.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
Risk of Rain 2. What more can I say about this game that hasn't already been said? It's just so goddamn fun. If you want to know how I 100% feel about the game, then I recommend to go watch this little video made by Angel? Is that how I'm supposed to pronounce it? I don't know. It's got some pretty top-notch editing and it's pretty spot on the appeal and charm of Risk of Rain. It isn't for everybody, but if you're someone that likes this type of game, then you're really going to like Risk of Rain 2. Even I was skeptical at one point due to its chaotic nature during the latter half of Long Run. One game was all it took to convince me of this masterpiece of an indie game. But we're here to talk about the music, goddammit, and Risk of Rain 2 has no shortage of it.
Christodoulou
is out here doing God's work for Risk of Rain. The guy is making 5+ minute long bangers for stages in a game where your goal is to finish in the least amount of time possible so that the difficulty increases don't punish you for taking your sweet time. If you haven't already, go listen to The Rain, formerly known as Purple. That song is an absolute vibe. But while this song is probably considered one of the best in the game, it's not my personal favorite. For that, we need to turn our attention to a rather infamous stage. The stage known as the Sundered Grove. Sundered Grove is not very liked within the Risk of Rain 2 community. It's dimly lit, making chests, teleporters, and certain enemies harder to spot. It's a large vertical map, meaning if you don't have the proper movement items, traversing it becomes a tedious task. The enemy combinations that spawn in the map can range from annoying to really frustrating. And it houses the Lava Swarm event, which is notorious for being a run ender if you're unlucky enough to have it appear when you don't have any movement items. I'm not the first to say it, and I'm most certainly not going to be the last person to say it. Sundered Grove is kinda bullshit. With all that being said though, I love Sundered Grove, and it's purely because of the theme. The first time I entered this level, I felt completely lost. Alongside my small Asian eyes and terrible eyesight, everything just blended into the stage and caused me to run around looking for the teleporter longer than I'd like to admit. Searching and searching, I fell down to the lowest level, looted a few chests, and unfortunately found out that if all you had for mobility was a single goat hoof, your only real way back up was through the spiral. So I shot and I walked, praying that this TP would magically show itself to me. But as I'm losing my mind in this seared forest, something was welling. Something was getting louder. And something was about to give me the largest eargasm of my life. The guitar, the drums, the absolute harmonic unison that flows through my veins when the beat drops. All that anxiety I had playing through the stage, gone, washed away as if I were bathing in the holy water and cleansing all the wrongdoing I've done on this mortal plane. All I can think of now is how much I'm just grooving to the music. This is what I mean when I say a good track can save a game. If even arguably the worst stage in the game is enjoyable thanks to the music, then you know you're doing something right. Now to be fair, Sundered Grove isn't a badly designed stage from a game design perspective, especially when compared to the whole gaming industry as a whole. Probably, I don't know, I don't have a degree in game design, so saying that this music saved this stage sounds pretty pretentious and is pretty disingenuous to Hopu. But counterpoint, that goddamn guitar riff.
Pathetic. subtlest. Dante.
Character themes aren't used as often as stage or boss music, as it typically requires a character to have some form of personality to latch onto, and it's these personalities that form a sort of symbiotic relationship with the character themes to fully bring out the potential of both the song and the character. Both Devil Trigger and Bury the Light are perfect examples of this. Each song encapsulates Nero and Virgil to a T, and if these songs weren't tied to Nero and Virgil specifically, I don't think these songs would hold as much weight. Don't get me wrong, if these were standalone songs, they'd still be some absolute bangers. But it's because Virgil is the face of Bury the Light, the embodiment of a fedora-tipping weeb swordsman, while simultaneously being the most badass motherfucker around, that I think the song goes from great to absolutely legendary. Another game that I think that does pretty well with this is the Ace Attorney series. Each defense lawyer and prosecutor has their own themes that are constantly at odds with each other during trials. One moment, Phoenix could be making a huge breakthrough in the case with this beautiful violin in the background of this triumphant moment. Only to have Prosecutor Goto bringing that smooth jazz, telling Phoenix he's fucking stupid, and then proceeds to throw a potentially searing hot cup of coffee at his face. Ace Attorney music is great, but I'm gonna stop talking about it because I probably want to see it for a future video. Both Devil May Cry and Ace Attorney have great music, but they weren't the reasons I wanted to talk about character themes. They were simply the appetizers for probably the big reason I wanted to make this video in the first place. For that, we'll have to turn our attention to a title under the king of JRPGs, Square Enix. Octopath Traveler 2 is a big surprise for me when it comes to games. I'll be the first to say it, as a huge Persona 5 fan, turn-based JRPGs are a little outdated and a lot of times kinda boring. So imagine how I felt when a turn-based JRPG that as a sequel to a game that I've never played caused me to sink over 100 hours of my life into it and became one of my favorite games of all time. The game is visually stunning, the gameplay, although turn-based, was engaging enough thanks to the break and boost system, and the story, although it had some up and downs, was overall very enjoyable. But where the game truly shines is in its 8 main playable characters. And I mean, it should be obvious, it's in the name after all. Each main character has their own story that you must go through with their own goals, conflicts, side characters, and antagonists. Each protagonist is quite distinct, so you'll eventually find one that will be your favorite of the bunch. From the selection, you get to choose from Anime Protagonist 101, Pokemon Trainer Catgirl, Snarky Agnostic Priest, Beautiful Assassin with Family Issues, Sasuke if he was an old man, Casti, I am a gentle, kind apothecary unless the situation calls for it, in which case violence is the only option, prepared to die, Florens, my personal favorite, a merchant trying to end world poverty through sheer willpower and Riz, and lastly, the young aspiring dancer whose character theme helped me during troubled times. Agnea's Song of Hope has a special place in my heart, and truly does live up to its name. I don't want to dampen the mood of this video, but I was in the greatest headspace around the time I was playing Octopath, and it was Song of Hope that gave me peace of mind. Each time I listened to it, I would think that things could get better, and as corny as it sounds, that there is hope. Not only that, it's a song that reflects Agnea really well. A performer who finds purpose in bringing joy and happiness to others through her dancing. And it's in that selflessness that I find her very charming. But Agnea is also kind of cheating since I'm a huge sucker for violins, and Agnea's English VA is Xanthe Huynh, who also voices Best Girl in Persona 5, so there's no bias here, just stating an objective fact that Song of Hope slaps. An honorable mention for League of Legends champion themes. Game might be shit, but when it comes to anything other than game balance, Riot knows what they're doing. Especially when they made Pantheon's theme, my god were they cooking. And so we have finally reached the crux of video game music. Some of the most memorable parts of a video game, it's the boss fights and their music. There is no such thing as a good boss without good boss music, and you cannot convince me otherwise. A good boss theme is what sets the stage for your confrontation with a big baddie. The tension, the struggle, the climax. If there was no epic orchestral choir for grand bosses in Souls-like games, or if there was no hype vocal tracks such as Live and Learn for Sonic Adventure 2 and Rivers in the Desert for Persona 5, then are you really even facing a boss? A boss should feel like an obstacle that you as the player must overcome, and it's through the music you gain the feeling of it's do or die time. In terms of difficulty, Sonic Adventure and Persona 5's final boss are walking apart, especially when compared to Dark Souls or Elden Ring. But no matter the difficulty gap, it's through the music that you really start immersing yourself. When that guitar starts kicking in, you truly feel like you're Sonic in Shadow, the last defense standing against the destruction of the planet. When Lynn's vocals start hitting the chorus, you truly feel like Joker, a vigilante hero who is the only hope of keeping society from falling into the hands of the corrupt. And when that choir drops, you truly do feel like the Ashen One or the Tarnished about to face what feels like an insurmountable wall, but it is through conviction and steadfast willpower that you will eventually succeed in your trials. Granted, the feeling of accomplishment of overcoming a Souls boss is more gratifying than any other boss out there, but while you are in the moment, every fight feels equally as badass if the backing track is absolutely jamming. And I think Wildfrost truly exemplifies this statement. Wildfrost is a simple game with a simple cute art style and simple mechanics. If you played any other deck building roguelikes like Slay the Spire, then you'll understand the gameplay loop of Wildfrost. Initially, this game wasn't even on my radar until a close friend of mine recommended it to me. I looked it up only to find that it had mixed reviews on Steam, which is not how you want first impressions to go. The reviews would say things like the game had balancing issues, the game was too hard, and that someone lost on the first fight of a run. And I'm like, damn, this game is that hard? I bought it anyways because I liked its art style and braced myself for the worst. And what did I learn after a few hours of runs? That apparently there are some actual babies playing this game. Now, this may come off as a little rude, but how in the flying fuck are you losing to the first fight of a run? You have to actively making bad moves to lose on the first fight. I'll agree that the game is difficult. Sometimes luck isn't on your side and you don't have a good setup going. But with decent decision making, even the worst stars can at the very least make it to the first boss. I'll give the benefit of the doubt and say that maybe they meant the first boss, but even then, the game's difficulty is not so hard that you'll give a negative review for it. If anything, the small piece of critique I had for the game would be that I wish there was more things to do during the runs. My favorite thing to do instead of Spire is going to question marks and triggering random events. These events can be run ending, but what's a game without a little gambling to spice things up a bit? My theory on why the game didn't do so well on release was because of its art style. It gives off comfy vibes, and that ends up attracting gamers who are more used to playing more relaxed games, only to find themselves confronted by an oncoming blizzard. And those who are more versed in these type of games find themselves enjoying it while being confused as to why the game's score was so low. But it was thanks to this little disagreement in the reviews that Wildfrost would pop up on people's radars. Streamers like Northernline would play the game seeing if the game's difficulty was all that and would end up propelling the game into the spotlight. So why am I telling you all of this? Wildfrost isn't perfect. Far from it. But I'll be damned if I let the game's absolutely amazing OST be tarnished by some negative reviews. Instead of your usual band or orchestra instrument, our good friend Paul Zimmerman decided to go a bit more traditional, and I guess for lack of a better word, indigenous. The music doesn't just make you feel like you're in a freezing cold, it is the freezing cold. It might be 90 plus degrees in here in the US of A, but the moment I boot up Wildfrost and the music kicks in, I'm out here giving the coldest sheesh of my life. And that goes especially for the boss theme, Winter's Wrath. This is a big fight. If you are unable to claim victory, you are to perish in the winter storm. Simply another soul lost to the dangers of the cold. But there is something you have that your enemies don't. A functioning frontal lobe. It is with your quick thinking and strategy that you will find your way through the tough battle, and once again, the music perfectly reflects this. I continue to sound pretentious even though I have zero qualifications to talk about music theory and composition, but I'll do it anyway. After the bombastic opening to signify that this is a boss, the music slows down and lets the string instrument take center stage as if to signify the playing phase of a fight. You ponder on how you should move your team around and if the card you're about to play is truly the correct move. It is then that the string instruments comes to a momentary stop, only for what I assume to be something akin to a xylophone to abruptly end the song. Well, I guess that's it. Time to loop the song and rethink my next move. Oh, sweet honey to my ears. Now we even have the wind instruments going hard on the track. The moment the beat dropped, this song instantly stole my heart and raised my impression of Wildfrost through the roof. It's just a silly little card game, so why the hell am I so immersed in this fight? Music taste is subjective and all, but how can you make it to the first boss and then declare to give the game a negative review? In all seriousness though, the game probably was very difficult on day one release, in which the devs responded quickly with a balance update. And I know that people don't value music as much as I do, so frustration with difficulty is a valid critique. But I do think Wildfrost is worth your time. The game is still receiving updates, so expect more content for the game in the future, with a good chance that the devs will listen to the community feedback. But if you're not willing to gamble $20, it never hurts to be patient and wait for a sale. Okay, so I know this is cheating because it's Sonic the Hedgehog, and if there's something Sonic will never fuck up, it's music. But come on, this is peak boss music.
I'm hanging on to the other side. I won't give up till the end of me.
Just hearing the song in my head sends me chills. It's no surprise that Sonic games have been in a rut these past few years. Sonic Lost Worlds, a mediocre game at best. Sonic Colors Ultimate is a terrible, buggy port of an already good game. Sonic Forces, a game that I could probably still beat even if I was lobotomized. Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric, we don't talk about that game. And although Sonic Mania was a good game, it was a classic style Sonic game made by fans who had passion for the series. So when Sonic Frontiers was announced, Sonic fans around the world could be heard huffing unhealthy amounts of copium. They've learned from their mistakes. It can't get any worse than Sonic Forces. They're experimenting with open world Sonic. They can't mess this up. And when the game finally came out and the reviews started pouring in, a giant sigh of relief echoed across the internet. Sonic Frontiers was a good game. Is it the perfect Sonic game? Fuck no. Was this game rushed out but still needed a little bit more time in the game dev oven? Oh, 100%. Barren zones, buggy and glitchy as hell on release, frequent pop-ins, Sonic Frontiers suffers from what I like to call the AAA brain rot. But to give credit where credit is due, it is a big step in the right direction. You can actually feel that there were people on the dev team that tried to push a good product out. Maybe not everybody was on board because of the crunch culture, but if the Sonic team can keep improving from this point on, then I have high hopes for the Blue Hedgehog that made up my childhood. But enough about being sappy. Super Sonic. I thought this shit was cool as fuck as a kid. The same cannot be said when it comes to Super Sonic fights though. They're okay at best. Most of the time, it's just you maneuvering Sonic and dodging attacks before you ram into the boss's weak spot. Even the Sonic Adventure 2 final boss, which I praise for having Live and Learn for its backing track, although thematically cool, is just the same dodging and ramming that Sonic players are used to. However, I don't know what kind of crack Sonic team was on when making Frontiers, but they decided to go whole hog when designing supersonic boss fights. You still got your flying towards the boss and dodging their attacks, but now, once you're up close and personal, Sonic starts going full anime on the boss, activating his stand and shooting energy beams right from his hand, and even performing the forbidden Shadow Clone Jutsu. It sounds so lame when I say it like this, but trust me, it's so goddamn cool. And to top this departure from the supersonic formula, you got this insane metal track backing while you're pulling off crazy combos. Chef's kiss, mwah. Perfection. And to think, this isn't even Frontier's only banger boss theme. Undefeatable just so happens to be my favorite. At last, we've made it to the end. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for sticking with me nerding on something I'm somewhat passionate about. Honkai Star Rail, an anime-style gacha game from the creators of Genshin Impact. Wait, where are you going? Please don't leave. I swear, this will be worth your time. To be frank, I had originally wanted to make a separate video for Honkai Star Rail and gush about one song in particular, but after finishing the script, I thought of this video and decided to just scrap the whole Star Rail script and move this song here. Star Rail is a lot of fun and the story is honestly pretty solid for a gacha game. But there within lies the problem. It's a fucking gacha game. A new one at that, so there wasn't much to really talk about on a deeper level. In the original script, it was mainly boiled down to it's got a good story, good characters, a basic turn-based combat system that is carried by its animation, mommy, and one very specific moment in particular. If you progress far enough into the Star Rail story, then you know exactly what moment I'm talking about. For everyone else though, let me paint you a scene. Eurilo 6, a planet suffering from an unending winter caused by Celeron, the equivalent to a cancer cell eating away at the universe. On Eurilo, the remaining survivors of the disaster would gather to form the last stronghold in order to preserve civilization, the city of Belobog. The Guardian of Belobog, an individual chosen to protect their people from the slowly encroaching demise and lead them against the Celeron that appeared centuries ago. But every person that inherits this position will end up being visited by the voices of the Celeron, whispering tales of a new world that they can bring about so long as the Guardian submits to their bidding. A world with no suffering. A paradise. But only those who are deemed worthy are allowed to revel in the creation of this new world. But for centuries, the Guardians stand strong. These Guardians will end up losing nights of sleep due to these voices constantly ringing in their head. But their duty to protect their people is what keeps them sane. But even if these Guardians do not falter to these sweet lies, the Celeron's influence continues to spread like a cancer on the world. Time continues to go by with the eternal winter and the fragmentum showing no signs of stopping. With no clear answer on how to stop the crisis, it's no surprise that inevitably, no matter how strong the will of preservation may be, one of these Guardians would eventually break. To say Kakolia's boss fight was the biggest highlight in the game for me is an understatement. This fight single-handedly shot both the story and the music of Star Rail into the fucking stratosphere for me. From the trailblazers scaling the ancient weapon to them getting stabbed by Kakolia, only for that to end up biting Kakolia in the back as you harness the power of preservation and get yourself a sweet new weapon for the final confrontation against the former Guardian turned Ice Witch. And once you finally get into battle, the music starts going off. it's do or die time. The battle wages on with your new lance and the engine of creation in your control. You finally break away at Vicolia's defenses, but she isn't going down without a fight. In her final desperate attempt to stop our heroes, she begins drawing power directly from the Stellar Line itself. You continue to hack and slash at her until finally she finishes her channeling and the music goes silent.
The power of the Stellaron is with me! You are but cinders of the old world, soon to become ashes! Translates into hope!
You're telling me that there are vocals? I was already jamming to the instrumental alone, and now I'm hyped up on headbanging adrenaline. This is a gacha game for fuck's sakes. All they needed was big anime mommy milkers to make bank, and yet here they are producing top quality boss music for a PNG simulator. Look up any reactions to this fight on YouTube and you'll quickly find tons of jaws being dislocated with how far they're dropping. The execution and sync that Wildfire has with the fight is just so clean. The time of transition from epic instrumental to rock vocal using Vicolia's big finisher is just genius. God, I'm bricked up just thinking about it. Anyway, Honkai Star Rail is pretty cool, but you should only really check it out if you 1. Like the anime style, 2. Have restraint when it comes to spending, and 3. Play it for the story and not for the gacha grind fest. And that's all I want to talk about for this video. There's a lot of music I want to gush about, but I actually want to get this video out sometime soon, so they had to be cut. So let's do a quick lightning round to wrap up the video. My mental fortitude wouldn't be the same without good ass music to keep me going. So yeah, I like video game music a lot. So if you got your own favorite video game OST, please do share it in the comments below. I'm always looking for something new to listen to, but this probably won't be the last time I talk about the music I like, so stay tuned for more stuff like this. So please, game devs, if you just put in one good song into your game, I probably still won't buy your game if it's shit, but at the very least, you won't be a complete laughingstock. That's gotta count for something, right?